Usually when we start one of these deep dives, I'm bouncing off the walls a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. You usually are.
Yeah, we're usually cracking open a file on some massive interstellar empire, right?
Yeah.
With faster than light dreadnoughts, or we're unpacking a piece of technology that completely rewrites the laws of physics. We tend to gravitate toward the shiny stuff, the loud stuff.
Tangible stuff,
Yeah.
the things you can measure and map.
Exactly. But today feels different. I've got the source material right here in front of me, specifically PDF 002, and honestly, the vibe is heavy.
It is.
It feels less like we're reading a history book or a technical manual, and more like we've stumbled into the restricted section of an ancient library.
That is a very apt description, and that shift in tone is entirely appropriate for what we are discussing today. We aren't looking at the history of a starship fleet or a political alliance here.
Right.
We're looking at something much older, something quieter, and if we were being honest with the source text, something much more dangerous.
Yeah, the file is titled simply the Noc'Tya. And right off the bat, the archive flags this as a foundational source text. So this isn't just a footnote in the Orion saga, is it?
Far from it. This is a cornerstone.
Yeah.
To understand the vast tapestry of the Orion saga, the wars, the desperation, the rise and fall of civilizations, you have to understand this specific file. It's the shadow that defines the light.
But looking at the other names listed here in the metadata, demons, hellspawn, forces of evil, it feels like we're stepping out of science fiction entirely and straight into a horror story.
It certainly appears that way on the surface. But our mission today for this deep dive is to do exactly what the archive demands of us. We need to peel back that layer of myth.
Okay.
We need to stop looking at these entities as monsters hiding under the bed and start understanding them through the calm, factual lens of the records. Because the reality of the Noc'Tya is actually far more fascinating and unsettling than the ghost stories.
Okay, let's start with the name then. Because Noc'Tya sounds a lot more specific and frankly a lot more dignified than demons.
Exactly. Noc'Tya is their self-designation. It's what they call themselves.
Yeah.
The other names you mentioned, demons, forces of evil, hellspawn, those are external labels. They are emotional reactions.
So calling them demons is basically a result of fear.
Fear and a profound lack of vocabulary. Imagine you are a biological creature living in a physical universe defined by logic and physics. You understand gravity, you understand matter.
Sure.
Then you encounter an entity that defies all those natural laws. You don't have the scientific language to describe it, so you reach for religious or mythological language. You call it hellspawn because it seems to come from a bad place.
That makes perfect sense. It's like if a medieval knight saw a jet plane, they might call it a dragon.
Precisely. But the source text, PDF 002, is very clear on this point. These are extra-dimensional entities. They aren't magic. They aren't supernatural in the sense that they can't be explained. They are just part of a cosmic structure we barely understand.
I really like that distinction. It grounds it. So let's talk about where they actually come from. Because the text says they originate from the abyss. Now, is that a planet? A nebula? A black hole?
It is none of those things. You cannot set a course for the abyss on a starship navigation computer. You can't fly there.
Right, because they're extra-dimensional.
Yes. The source describes the abyss as a separate universe entirely. It exists outside the familiar space-time of the Orion saga.
Wait, so they aren't even from our universe. They aren't just neighbors we don't get along with.
No, they are visitors in the most dangerous sense. Think of the universe of the Orion saga, the entire Orion arm, as a realm of order. It operates on laws of physics, cause and effect, time moving forward. The abyss is the antithesis of that. It is a universe ruled by chaos and entropy.
Ruled by chaos, that's hard to wrap my head around. I picture a riot or a massive storm.
Think of it less like a chaotic event and more like a chaotic state of existence. In our universe, energy wants to organize. Atoms form molecules, stars form galaxies. In the abyss, the fundamental force is unmaking. It is entropy personified. And the Noc'Tya, they are the children of that chaos.
Wow, that makes them sound incredibly ancient.
They are. The records state they are among the oldest known powers.
Yeah.
There is no birth date for the Noc'Tya. They didn't evolve from single-celled organisms in a swamp somewhere. They didn't invent fire and then wheels and then rockets.
They just always were.
They have simply been. They are the quiet shapers of realities, existing long before many of the civilizations in the Orion saga even learned to look up at the stars.
It's interesting you say shapers of realities, because when I read Ruled by Chaos, I imagine them just running around breaking things. But let's get into the physical reality of these things. If I'm standing in a room, say, on a space station, and a Noc'Tya enters, what am I actually seeing? Do they have horns? tails, glowing red eyes.
This is where it gets fascinating, and where the demon label really starts to fall apart. The archive is explicit here. The Noc'Tya have no fixed physical body. They completely defy biological classification.
So they're invisible.
Not exactly. They don't have a body in the way you or I do. They aren't made of flesh or matter or atoms that we would recognize. If you see a Noc'Tya, the source implies that you are seeing a projection. The encounter is described as perception dependent.
Perception dependent. So my brain is filling in the blanks.
Exactly. It's a cognitive reflex. Your mind cannot process a being of pure entropy. It's like trying to visualize a color that doesn't exist. So your brain frantically searches your memories and your fears for a reference point to make sense of the trauma.
Oh, I see. So if I'm terrified of spiders, I might see something spider-like. Or if my culture believes in horned devils, that's what manifests.
Precisely. The form is unstable and temporary. You are projecting a shape onto a void.
That is terrifying in a completely different way. It's psychological warfare just by existing.
It is. And it explains why descriptions of them vary so wildly across different cultures in the Orion saga, yet always evoke the exact same primal dread. But there's another detail in the text regarding their nature that I find incredibly compelling. It says they do not use tools or technology.
Really? No spaceships? No weapons?
None.
That's almost hard to believe. In the Orion saga, everyone has tech. The Atlanter, the humans, the Terran factions. It's all about who has the better engines, the bigger lasers, the faster drives. But the Noc'Tya don't use any of it.
They don't need to. Their power is described as shifting states of being.
Shifting states?
Yes, this is the real insight here, I think. We have to stop thinking of them as aliens who travel from point A to point B using a vehicle.
Yeah.
They are entities that exist outside the laws of physics.
So why build a spaceship if you can just be there?
Exactly. Why would you need a spaceship to cross the void if you can alter the fabric of reality itself to be where you want? Why would you need a gun if you can shift your state of existence to bypass a wall, or simply unmake the person standing in your way?
It changes the whole dynamic of the conflict. It's not a war of resources, it's a war of existence. It's physics versus anti-physics. But that raises a massive question for me.
Go on.
If they are these all-powerful, physics-defying chaos beings who can just shift around, why haven't they just wiped out the Orion arm? Why is there anything left?
Because there are rules.
Yeah.
Even for them. The source mentions a barrier.
A barrier, like a giant wall.
Not a wall of brick or energy fields made by a machine.
Yeah.
It seems to be a natural boundary between the universes. The Noc'Tya cannot just walk into the universe of the Orion saga freely. Direct presence is extremely rare, perhaps even impossible for the more powerful entities. They can't linger here.
Why not?
Because our universe is hostile to them. Our laws of physics, our order, acts like a poison to them. Just as a fish cannot survive long on land, a creature of pure entropy cannot survive long in a universe defined by strict physical laws.
Okay, so they're locked out. That's good news. We have a natural defense.
They are physically locked out, yes. But, and this is the crucial part, that doesn't mean they can't reach in. Since they cannot be here directly, they have perfected the art of indirect warfare. They work through manipulation.
Oh, the puppet masters.
In a sense. But it's more subtle than just pulling strings. The text describes ideological, psychological, and metaphysical nudges. They don't need to invade a planet with an army. They just need to whisper the right idea into the ear of a leader. They need to push a culture that is already on the edge.
You know, the source used a specific phrase that really stuck with me. It said they are rarely the root cause of a fire. They are the fuel on a fire already burning.
That is the crucial metaphor for understanding the Noc'Tya. They are incredibly efficient. They don't create the disaster from scratch. They look for the cracks that are already there.
So they're targeting what exactly? Weakness?
They target entropy within us. They look for inner fractures and crumbling orders. Imagine a civilization that is politically divided, where trust is eroding, or a society that has lost its moral compass, or even a single individual who is full of grief and rage.
So they prey on instability.
Exactly. That is where the Noc'Tya enter. They find that fracture and they widen it. They amplify the chaos that is already present.
That's almost more sinister than an invasion fleet. I mean, an invasion you can fight. You can see the enemy ships on radar. You can shoot at them. But how do you shoot at a metaphysical nudge? How do you defend against something that turns your own internal problems into a catastrophe?
That is the great challenge they pose. It makes paranoia a weapon. And they use proxies. The text mentions they can use whole peoples or lone souls, sometimes willing, sometimes unwitting.
Wait, unwitting, so you could be doing the work of the Noc'Tya and not even know it?
Theoretically, yes. If your actions are driving chaos, if you are tearing down order and fueling destruction without a constructive purpose, you are aligning with their nature. You become a conduit for the abyss, whether you signed a contract or not.
That leads me to the question of why. Usually when we talk about villains in these histories, they want something tangible. They want land, they want resources, they want political power. Do the Noc'Tya hate us? Is this personal?
That is a very human question. We want to ascribe human emotions to our enemies because it makes them understandable. The source text addresses this directly. It asks, do they see themselves as malevolent? And the answer is unknown.
Unknown, just like that.
We know they act with clear intent. They aren't just mindless storms, but the text says their intent isn't moral or emotional in the way we understand it. They aren't sitting in the abyss wringing their hands and laughing about how much they hate humans or Atlanta.
So it's not hate. Then what drives them?
The drive is entropy. Their goal appears to be simply pushing chaos forward. The archive offers a few theories on why, but admits there is no final proof. Theory 1 is that chaos is simply their natural state.
It's doing what they do.
Right. Just as we breathe air and build structures to create order, they breathe disorder. To expand chaos is just to be themselves.
Like a shark swimming. It's not evil for the shark to eat. It's just what a shark does.
Exactly. Theory 2 is that chaos is a form of survival for them. Perhaps order is painful to them. Perhaps the existence of our structured universe presses against them, and expanding the abyss is the only way they can continue to exist comfortably.
Okay, and theory 3.
Theory 3 is that chaos is a way to grow. That by consuming realities, by breaking down order into entropy, they gain power or complexity. But again, these are theories. The Noc'Tya do not give interviews.
No, I imagine not. It's unnerving, though, the idea of coordinated influence. Because usually chaos implies randomness, but you're saying they are organized.
Organized, but not in a hierarchy we would recognize. The text notes that words like society or government don't apply to them, but they don't trip over each other either. They move with a singular, terrible purpose. There's a coordination to their influence. It's a collective intelligence directed at one thing, the unraveling of our reality.
Speaking of their influence and how we perceive them, I have to bring up the one specific figure the archive mentions. There's a note about a symbolic form that appears across cultures.
Ah, yes, the archival note.
It mentions that many cultures have tales of a single, towering Noc'Tya figure, and it specifically notes that humans often use the name Satan for this archetype. That's a huge concept to drop into a sci-fi archive.
It is a delicate point, and one where we must be careful to stick strictly to the source. The archive views this through an anthropological lens. It notes that this figure, whether called Satan by humans or by other names in other species, is a cultural shorthand.
Shorthand for what? Like the boss?
Shorthand for the ultimate embodiment of that chaos. Biological minds, like ours, crave structure. We crave a face to put on our enemy. It is incredibly difficult to fight an abstract concept like entropy, so we create a myth of a king of chaos, a leader.
So the text is saying Satan might not be real? Or that he is real, but he's a Noc'Tya. I just want to make sure I'm capturing the archive's stance accurately.
The text is intentionally ambiguous. It says, whether real being, projection, or just a tidy myth, no one knows. It acknowledges the power of the symbol without confirming the biological reality of the entity. It could be that there's a powerful Noc'Tya who leads them. Or it could be that the Noc'Tya simply project that image because they know it terrifies us.
That goes right back to the perception thing. If we expect a devil, they give us a devil.
Precisely. It feeds the fear. It feeds the chaos. And if they can make us believe there is a singular, all-powerful enemy, perhaps that makes us more likely to despair.
This has been really intense. We've covered their origins in the abyss, their lack of physical bodies, their method of using our own fractures against us. But where does that leave us right now? In the timeline of the Orion saga, are they gone? Did someone figure out a way to beat them?
No, they are not gone. The status report in PDF 002 is very clear. They are still out there.
Still in the abyss.
Yes. Working slowly, quietly, over centuries. They are described as a persistent threat, never loud, never gone. They aren't an army that you defeat in one final battle and then go home. They are a constant condition of the universe.
The text used a phrase, a whisper behind every storm.
That is the most evocative line in the entire document, I think. A whisper behind every storm. It implies that while they might not cause every bad thing that happens, they are always there, watching, waiting for the opportunity to make it worse.
It really forces you to look at the conflicts in the Orion saga differently. You know, you see a civil war or a societal collapse and you have to wonder, was that natural? Or was there a nudge? Was there a whisper?
And that brings us to the most important takeaway from this source material. The Noc'Tya forced civilizations to look at their own internal fractures, because remember, they cannot enter a fortress that is sealed tight. They need a crack.
They need the fuel.
They need the fuel. If a society is just, if it is psychologically whole, if it is in order, the Noc'Tya have no purchase. They slide off like water on glass. They only gain a foothold when we fail ourselves.
So, in a weird way, the defense against these extra-dimensional chaos entities isn't bigger guns, it isn't building a massive fleet, it's getting our act together.
It is the ultimate argument for order. Not tyranny, because tyranny creates fear, and fear creates cracks, but true internal stability. If we want to keep the abyss at bay, we don't look to the stars with weapons, we look inward. We fix the fractures in our cultures, our politics, and our spirits.
That is a profound place to land. We started off talking about entities from another dimension, and we ended up talking about the integrity of our own civilization.
As is often the case with these archival records, the external threat reflects the internal reality.
The safety of the galaxy depends on keeping our own house in order. I'm going to be thinking about that one for a while. It makes you realize that every little bit of chaos we create, every conflict we let fester, we might be ringing the dinner bell for something much, much worse.
A sobering thought, but an empowering one too. It means the power to stop them is, and always has been, in our hands.
Definitely. But, it leaves me with one final thought for everyone listening. We talked about keeping our house in order to starve them of fuel, but I want you to think about what order really means.
That's a dangerous path to walk down.
Right, because if we try to enforce too much order, if a civilization becomes rigid and oppressive just to stop the chaos, does that very oppression create the internal fractures the Noc'Tya are looking for?
A fascinating paradox.
Is the perfect defense actually the very thing that invites them in? Something to mull over. And on that note, we are going to close the file on PDF 002. It's been a darker journey than usual, but an absolutely necessary one. Thanks for helping us stare into the abyss today.
It was my pleasure entirely. Just remember to blink.
Good advice. We'll see you next time on the deep dive. Stay curious, stay safe, and keep your house in order. Bye for now.